Now, I want to read to you one of my favorite authors and one of the most favorite things that's ever been written outside of Scripture. It's from John Flavel, the old Puritan. If you have a chance to read his first volume of his works, I would recommend you do so. He is describing here what I call the dialogue between the Father and the Son, or the Father's bargain, as Flavel calls it. It's a discussion that could have happened in eternity about the sacrifice that Christ would give for His people. Here's what Flavel says. Here you may suppose the Father to say, when driving His bargain with Christ for you, the Father is talking to the Son about how will this wicked people be saved. And the Father speaks, my Son, here is a company of poor, miserable souls that have utterly undone themselves and now lie open to my justice. Justice demands satisfaction for them, or will satisfy itself in the eternal ruin of them. Don't you see? It's not that there's some principle of justice hanging over the head of God that He has to submit to, and therefore He cannot simply pardon, but a payment must be made. No. God is just. He is consistent and perfect in all His attributes. He cannot love and save at the expense of His justice. I've heard preachers say this before, instead of being just with you, God was loving. Well, if you study logic, you realize that means that God's love is unjust. No, my friend. God has to be just and loving at the same time. In His justice, He condemned you. In His love, He became a man and stood in your place and paid the crime, your crime. And then the Father asked the Son, what shall be done for these souls? And thus Christ returns. This is the Son speaking. O my Father, such is my love to and pity for them. Now think about this. I don't want you as a group, but as individuals to think about this. He looks at you and He says this, Father, such is my love to this one person and my pity for them. After they've broken every command, He still says, such is my love and such is my pity. Proud men say, I don't want your pity. You need His pity. You need His pity. We are pitiful. He says, such is my love to and pity for them, that rather than they shall perish eternally, I will be responsible for them as their guarantee. Bring in all thy bills, Father, that I may see what they owe thee. Now, sometimes a young man will get married, and after he gets married, he'll start getting a little shaky on his commitment. He said, I had no idea marriage was this tough. I don't know if this is really what I'm made to do. You see, he was boasting about how much he would love this girl. He had no idea the commitment he was going to have to make. But that is not true with Christ. Here He says to the Father, Father, bring in everything they owe thee. Let me see it. Imagine this. He sees everything that you owe justice. He doesn't go to that cross blindly. He doesn't get on the cross and say, no, Father, I don't want to do this. I didn't know it would cost so much. He knew from eternity how much it would cost Him, and yet He still did it. But listen to this. Bring in all thy bills that I may see what they owe thee. Lord, bring them all in. Now listen, believers, if this doesn't make you so happy you weep or cry out for joy, you're not understanding what I'm saying. He says, bring in all the bills. Bring them all in, that there may be no after reckonings with them. Do you see what He's saying? Bring in every one of their bills from the time they were born to the time they die. Everything they owe thee, Father. Bring them all in. I want to see them all, and on that tree, I want to pay for them all there so that you never have to deal with them again with regard to their sin. Do you see that, believer? He never has to deal with you again. It's over. All your crimes are paid for. Your crimes in the past, your crimes in the present, your crimes you're going to commit in the future, all of them paid for. And some people say, well, if you tell that to people, they'll just sin. No, they won't. Not true believers. Carnal, wicked, lost church members will hear that and go on sinning. But believers will say, if His love is like that, if He has set me free completely, I'm His. I don't want to sin anymore. I don't want to sin anymore. You see, brothers, that's what leads to holiness. That's why the gospel is called the mystery of godliness. You see that? It's the thing that produces godliness in the believer. Yes, there are commands and there are rules, but that's not what makes us godly. What makes us godly is knowing that Jesus died and that He died for me. And when He died, He paid for every sin, past, present, and future. And God will never again, never call me into His judgment hall to judge me. Never again. I'm free. I'm free. Oh, thank God I'm free. And you say, but Brother Paul, it says that there's going to be a judgment for a believer. Yeah, but listen to this. In that judgment, when you look up into the judge's face, it will be your father. It will be your brother. The one who judges you is the one who died for you. Don't you see that? You're free. You're free. No guilt. Always come to Him. Always go back to Him. Always run to Him. You're free. You finally walked through a door that no one in this world knows anything about. It's unconditional love. You're just loved, and it can't be changed now because of that perfect work of Christ on that tree on your behalf. He says, at my hand shalt thou require it, Father. I will rather choose to suffer the wrath they deserve than they should suffer it. Upon me, my Father, upon me place all their debt. This is amazing. Now listen to what the Father says. But my Son, if thou undertake for them, if you stand in their place, son, thou must reckon to pay the last mite. You must pay every penny. Now listen to this. Expect no abatements. He's saying, son, don't expect the punishment to fall on you to be anything less than what would fall upon them. And this is what the Father says. If I spare them, I will not spare you. Imagine that. And then the Son says, content, Father, let it be so. Charge it all upon me. I am able to discharge it. That right there, that's deity. No one can say that. Angels can't say that. No one can say that. Only the mighty Christ, only the Son of God can discharge it. He alone and no one else. And though it prove a kind of undoing to me, though it impoverish all my riches, empty all my treasures, yet I am content to undertake it. Father, I am content. I'll do it. I want this. Do you know in Philippians where it talks about he did not consider equality with God a thing to be grasped? He set that aside. He became a man, and not only a man, but a servant. You see, under the law of Israel, if a man was a servant to another man, and yet in that house that he served, he gained for himself a wife and children, when it came time for that man to be set free, if He passionately loved the woman that was His and the children that belonged to Him, He would go to His master and say, I do not want to be set free. I am content to stay here with my wife and my children. And the master would take him over to a doorway and take a sharp object like an awl or a knife or a nail and would pierce his ear. Christ so loved you, so loved His bride, that He who was ruler of all things, the heir of the universe and beyond, He became a servant because of His love for His bride, because of His love for you as individuals.